suffering. Still 80 k's to go. G'day crew, and welcome to another episode. Before we kick off, we would love it if you could hit the like button down there and also subscribe if you haven't already. We'd really appreciate it. We went off and did an epic adventure where we went down to Victoria and hit the brand new gravel race, the Dirty Warnie. Now the Dirty Warnie is a 246 kilometre gravel ride with about 3,500 metres of climbing. The course was modified a little bit this year to plan because they've had a lot of flooding down there. So didn't quite go to their plan, but what I can tell you is it was epic. It is one of the best races I've ever done. Brilliantly organised, course was great. The conditions, we got really lucky. Like at the start of the week, it was -1 and raining where we were riding. By the end of the week, it was a nice 8 degrees when we kicked off in the morning. Amazing. So as far as the race goes, how did we attack it? Took the gravel bike down. I ride a Cervelo Aspero. What was my setup like? Tyres. I've got a set of Hunt 700Cs, which were great. So carbon 700Cs. Can't remember the width, but they're reasonably wide. And I ran a set of 700 by 42 Terravale Washburns. I had 45 PSI in the back and 38 in the front. I'll probably run 35s the next time I do it because there's nothing gnarly in it. It's gravel roads, it's not single track, it's nothing crazy. Definitely would recommend running 35s, and I could possibly run a little bit higher pressures too. But then you've got to find that balance of, you know, vibration in your hands. You don't want to get sore hands, and comfort with speed. Maybe with the slightly narrower tyres, I will bump the pressure up. As far as my nutrition plan went, I carried 3 water bottles, one with a 3-hour bottle of Infinite, so a super strength bottle of Infinite, and I was supposed to run 2 smaller bottles, so 650ml bottles of Noon, but I started with that and kind of left my Noon tube in the car at the start line. So it ended up just being 2 bottles of water and my Infinite. And I did have some salt tablets, so I did tuck a couple of them in, although it wasn't hot, so it probably wasn't needed. Next time, I'll probably run only 2 bottles, just with Infinite in it, or a super strength one, maybe a 2-hour bottle and a single bottle, because there are so many feed stations and water stations along the way. They average about 30 kilometres apart, very roughly, and they go water station, feed station, that I don't think I needed just to carry the extra weight. I didn't need it. Plenty of times I was just filling up the same bottle. That was the learning I did take away. As far as the feed stations go, they were great. You could put a drop bag in so that at each station you could just roll up, grab whatever you needed within your bag, chuck it on your bike and carry on, and there was water there. Or you could just go hard at the smorgasbord of food that was there. Unfortunately, that wasn't part of my nutrition plan. I was pretty well ripe, but there were brownies and scones and biscuits and lollies, boxes of the stuff. It was unreal. Like if you wanted to go for a rolling 246 kilometre picnic, this is the race. The scenery out there was amazing. Like I mentioned, there was about 3,500 metres of up. Wasn't super steep. Some of them felt steeper than what they actually were near the end, but I think that was just because I was pretty buggered. You sort of rolled through farming land and then up through the forest of the Otways, so it almost went rainforesty, like subtropical rainforest, I guess you could call it, and then down through more farming land. Most of that climbing is at the start of the race. There is a straight which is 26 kilometres long, which is dead flat. That was pretty fun because we had a bit of a side wind and not a headwind. Could get pretty gnarly if you got a westerly blowing though. That would be pretty unenjoyable. You can't take aero bars either. I did have them on and got an email after I packed my bike in the bike bags and well, had to take them off. So the race does go from just outside of Geelong, Mount Duneed Estate, which is a winery. You leave your car there overnight, you ride to Warrnambool. Now what you can do if you don't have a support crew like we didn't, we just packed an overnight bag, they take it to the finish line, booked a motel, picked up the bag, stayed the night, and then there's a bus home in the morning that takes you back to the start line where your car was. So for us, it was a little bit of a logistical challenge because we travelled in, we stayed at a motel the night before. We had a mid-size SUV, it wasn't very big, so we had to unpack the bag, build the bike, then unbuild the bike, put it back in the bag, put it back in the car, drive to the start line, put the wheels back on, and off we went. And then when we got back off the bus, we had to put all the bikes and pack them as if we were jumping on the plane, which we were. The course was exceptional, as I mentioned earlier. It was really well marked, lots of signs. They give you a GPS map. They did have to do some last minute changes, so the GPS mapping wasn't quite 100% reliable, but the signage was great. Don't know anybody who got lost. I only heard of one accident because there were a few potholes around. One of the guys who was with a group that I was riding with at one stage did sort of miss a corner, but he was okay. He stayed upright. He just had a a rapid deceleration into some bushes, but he was all good. Key thing is just to watch out for some of the potholes. They have had a lot of rain though, so I don't know whether that's normal or abnormal. Time will tell. If we go back again next year, we'll find that out, right? The climbing out there, there's nothing crazy. There is a long climb at around, I think it's the 70k mark, where you climb up into the Otways. It was about 8 kilometers or so of up with a couple little downs in it. There's one little steeper section in there, but it only goes for about 100 meters, and I think it only hit like 16 or 17%. I just run standard gearing on my Sparrow. I haven't changed anything, and I never had any issues at all. I actually caught up with a bloke and we were chatting the whole way up, and probably could have gone up there a lot faster. When I got to the finish line, there was a good little finish line festival going on. You could buy some food or some beers. There was a bike wash there, which I didn't know until later, which I'm bummed because my bike is still filthy and it's a week later, which would have been really smart. Not a good job here. We just rode to the motel, went out for dinner, had a couple of beers, went to bed, headed off the next day. All in all, can highly recommend this race. Everything about it was sensational. It was the first time and they're looking to grow it again next year. Can't recommend it enough for anybody who wants to give a long gravel race a crack. There is a shorter version if you're not real keen on 246Ks, a 140K version that you can do, and it's the second half of the race, so it's definitely nowhere near as hilly. You don't have that big 8-kilometer climb. I'm going to say it might have 1,200 to 1,300 meters of elevation in there. There is a time cut on the long race, and I think you've got to average about 16 kilometers an hour. That's total time. So your moving time, depending on how long you stop for, you probably want to be able to ride at about 18 kilometers an hour to comfortably make the cutoff time. The last guy in was on a cargo bike, big platform out the front with his bag strapped to it. He made it with, I think, about 2 hours to spare. It gives you an idea that it's not challenging, but you could really challenge yourself if you went hard. There was a couple of people that I caught at the back end who were not in a good way, who'd gone out hard pretty early. From a strategy point of view, you get through that first half, get up the big climb, down the other side, I think it's to Forest, don't quote me on that, then you'd go. The guys up the front went early. I got to about 10 meters from the main group because I was sort of dawdling at the back, and we hit this sandy section and they just disappeared, never to be seen again. But I had a great time. I met some great people out there and some people after the race, which was really cool, and we sort of chatted and swapped turns and sort of separated and come back together. So you can make the race what you want. Big group ride, have a heap of fun, train really hard, race for the win, whether it's an age group or elite or whatever it is that you're chasing, and can highly recommend it. Bit of footage from the day. I didn't use my camera as much as I would have liked. It's not something that's a habit for me yet. There are bits of the race. There's not all of the race. I was going to get it out for the finish line. I completely forgot. Good job. I was pretty buggered by the end, I'm not going to lie. Hope you've enjoyed. And again, if you haven't already, hit subscribe. Give us a like, and if you've got any questions, bang them down there in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them, or maybe even try and point you in the right direction. All right, crew, until next time.